Before we dive into tonight's tale, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you want more creepy stories that will keep you up at night. Alright, let's dive into this like I'm telling you a story over a late night coffee, the kind where you lean in close because it's just too wild to miss. Picture this, a quiet little town called Ashwood, tucked away somewhere you'd barely notice on a map, and the night's so still you can hear your own heartbeat. That is, until every phone in the Crestwood Apartments, this beat-up old building that's seen better days, starts buzzing like a swarm of angry bees. The screens light up red, screaming out this emergency alert. Quarantine breach, biohazard detected, stay indoors, avoid contact with unknown substances. It's not just a one-and-done thing either. The message keeps looping, that robotic voice bouncing off the peeling wallpaper in the halls over and over until it's drilling into your skull. Doors creak open just a sliver and you can see eyes peeking out, wide, scared, wondering what the hell's going on. Up on the third floor, there's Ava Chen, 25 years old, this artist who barely leaves her apartment. She's got these dark circles under her eyes that make her look like she hasn't slept in weeks. Probably hasn't, knowing her. Her place is a mess. Canvases stacked against the walls, paint cans scattered like they've been kicked over in a fit. She's standing there in the middle of it all, frozen, clutching a paintbrush like it's a lifeline. The bristles are still wet with red paint, and she's staring at her latest piece. A chaotic mess of streaks that, honestly, look way too much like blood for comfort. She's been hearing these faint scratches in her walls for weeks now, little skittering sounds that wake her up at night. She told herself it was just rats, maybe the pipes settling or her own head playing tricks. She's been on edge lately, hasn't been eating right. But now, with that alert blaring from her phone on the table, her hands start shaking so bad the brush slips a little, leaving a fresh red smear on her fingers. She wipes it on her jeans, muttering to herself, "No, not now," like she's trying to convince the universe to cut her a break. Meanwhile, down in the lobby, you've got Omar Hassan, the landlord. He's 40, built like a linebacker, with this gruff voice that sounds like he's chewed gravel for breakfast. He's got a crowbar slung over his shoulder, pacing back and forth in front of the front door like a guard dog. The guy's always acted like he's got this place under control, even though the Crestwood's falling apart, cracked walls, flickering lights, the works. But tonight, there's this nervous tick in his jaw, a little twitch he can't hide, and when that alert hit, you could see it. A shiver ran right down his spine. He's yelling at nobody in particular, "Get those windows shut! Lock it down!" Even though most of the tenants are still hiding in their apartments. He stomps over to the front door, big boots thudding on the chipped tile, and slams the deadbolt home with a clang that echoes up the stairwell. The air smells like mildew down there, mixed with that stale cigarette stink that never leaves old buildings like this. Over by the mailboxes, Lily Park's standing there, 30 years old and 7 months pregnant. She's got this calm look on her face, like she's seen worse days, but her hands resting on her belly, fingers tracing slow circles. She's whispering to her kid, real soft, stuff like, "It's okay, little one, we're fine," even though the building's old pipes are groaning louder than ever, a deep rumble that vibrates up through the floor. She's got her hair pulled back in a messy bun, and her sneakers are scuffed, like she's been on her feet all day. Every now and then she glances toward the door, lips pressing tight. She's not panicking, not yet, but you can tell she's ready to fight tooth and nail if it comes to that. Then there's Jasper Cole, this 22-year-old med student, hovering near the stairwell with a backpack slung over one shoulder, stuffed with textbooks and notes. He's got these sharp eyes, always darting around, taking everything in. He's been digging into Ashwood Biotech for some school project. Turns out their lab's just 5 miles down the road, and the rumors about that place? Shady doesn't even cover it. He's fidgeting with his phone, thumbing the screen, when the alert hits again, that robotic voice cutting through the quiet. He mutters, "This is bad," under his breath, more to himself than anyone else, and starts pacing a little, shoes squeaking on the floor. He's got this hunch, you can see it, like he's piecing something together, but doesn't want to say it out loud yet. Omar turns from the door, wiping sweat off his forehead with the back of his hand. even though it's cold in here. Nobody leaves till we know what's out there. He growls, his voice rough like he's trying to sound tougher than he feels. Outside, the fog's rolling in thick now, swallowing up the streetlights until they're just faint yellow smudges. Somewhere in the distance, a siren starts up, this low, mournful wail that cuts through the night and makes your skin prickle. Lily tilts her head, listening, then says real quiet, "That's not the usual fire trucks." She's right. It's too steady, too eerie, like something out of a disaster movie. Ava comes trudging down the stairs then, her boots scuffing the worn steps, paint-stained hoodie pulled tight around her. She's got this far-off look, like she's still half in her own head, but when she hits the lobby, she stops short, staring at the little group. "Something's wrong with the walls," she says, her voice low but steady, cutting through the hum of the flickering fluorescent lights overhead. "I've heard it. Scratching, moving, for weeks." Omar snorts, rolling his eyes like she's lost it, but there's a flicker of doubt there too. Jasper's head snaps up from his phone, frowning, and he taps the record button, holding it out like he's collecting evidence. "Say that again," he tells her, all business now, "for my notes." Ava hesitates, shifting her weight, then repeats it, slower this time, her eyes flicking to the walls like she's expecting them to answer back. The air in the lobby's getting heavy, like the whole building's holding its breath. The pipes groan again, louder, a deep, rattling sound that makes the floor tremble under their feet. Lily grips the edge of the mailbox, her knuckles going white, and Omar hefts his crowbar a little higher, like he's ready to swing at whatever's coming. Jasper's still recording, muttering something about environmental factors under his breath, while Ava stares at the ceiling where a faint stain's starting to spread, dark and wet. Nobody says it yet, but they're all thinking the same thing. Whatever's out there, it might already be in here with them. And that's when the lights start to flicker. Just a little at first, like a warning. The group tightens up, backs pressing closer together, and you can hear their breathing, shallow, quick, waiting for the next move. So, there they are, Ava, Omar, Lily, and Jasper, all crammed together in the lobby of the Crestwood Apartments, this old heap that's starting to feel more like a trap than a home. The lights overhead are flickering now, not just a quick blink, but this stuttering buzz, like the wiring's throwing a tantrum. Everyone's eyes dart up, and that's when they hear it. This slow, wet drip, drip, drip coming from somewhere above. It's faint at first, like a leaky faucet, but it's enough to make the hairs on your neck stand up. Ava's the first to spot it. She's still got that far-off look, but she snaps out of it, her arm shooting up to point at the ceiling. "There," she says, voice tight, and sure enough, these red streaks are seeping through the cracks, slow and thick, trickling down like some nightmare version of rain. They hit the floor with soft little plops, pooling on the chipped tile, spreading out like spilled paint, or something worse. Omar lets out a string of curses, low and rough, the kind you'd hear from a guy who's just stubbed his toe, but knows it's way bigger than that. He's still got that crowbar in one hand, but he grabs a rag from his back pocket with the other, a grimy thing he's probably used to wipe grease off his hands 100 times. He stomps over, big boots squeaking on the wet floor, and swipes at the puddle. "What the hell is this?" he growls, but when he pulls the rag back, it's soaked red, sticky, clinging to his fingers like warm syrup. He stares at it, his face twisting, and you can see that tick in his jaw going double time now. He shakes his hand like he's trying to fling it off, but it smears across his knuckles instead, leaving this faint coppery smell hanging in the air. Jasper's already moving, dropping to one knee beside the puddle, his backpack thudding to the ground next to him. He's got this little pen light, barely bigger than a keychain, clicked on, shining it into the mess. The beam catches the red, making it glisten, and he leans in close, brow furrowed like he's studying for a test. "This isn't water," he says, his voice hitching just a little, though you can tell he's trying to keep it together. "It's organic, blood plasma maybe, or something close." He sits back on his heels, running a hand through his hair, and you can see the gears turning. "I read about this, Ashwood Biotech. They were messing with fungal bioagents, stuff designed to infiltrate structures, merge with them. If that's what this is." He trails off, flicking the light up to the ceiling where more of it's oozing out, slow and deliberate, like the building's sweating it out on purpose. Lily's standing a few steps back, her hand pressed tight against her belly, fingers splayed like she's shielding it. She's been quiet, but now her breath catches and she whispers, "It's moving." Her eyes go wide, locked on nothing, and the group turns to her, head swiveling like they're on strings. "The baby," she says, softer. "It kicked hard, right when that dripping started." Her voice cracks at the end, and that calm she's been holding on to slips just for a second. She takes a shaky step back, her sneakers scuffing the floor, and you can see her chest rising and falling faster now, her free hand clutching the edge of her jacket like it's an anchor. "That's not normal, right?" she asks, looking at Jasper. But he doesn't answer right away. He's too busy staring at the ceiling, penlight trembling in his grip. Omar's had enough of standing around. "Screw this," he snaps, hefting the crowbar with both hands now. He marches over to the nearest wall, where some of that red's starting to streak down, and swings hard. The metal cracks into the plaster with a dull thunk, sending a puff of dust into the air. But what happens next stops him cold. The red ooze pulses, like it's got a heartbeat of its own, and these thin, vein-like lines start spreading out under the surface, throbbing in time with some rhythm nobody can hear. The wall actually shudders under the hit, a low tremble that rattles up through the floorboards. "This building's old, not alive," he barks, but it sounds more like he's trying to convince himself than anyone else. He steps back, crowbar still raised, and you can see the sweat beating on his forehead now, catching the flickering light. His bravado's cracking, just like that plaster, and he wipes his sleeve across his face, leaving a faint red smear from his stained hand. Before anyone can process it, this scream cuts through the air, high-pitched, ragged, the kind that makes your gut twist. It's coming from upstairs, second floor, and it's Mrs. Carter, this sweet old lady who's lived here forever. Omar's already moving, barking, "Come on," as he charges for the stairs, crowbar banging against the railing with every step. The others follow, Ava stumbling a little as she shakes off her daze, Jasper shoving his penlight in his pocket and grabbing his bag, Lily lagging behind but pushing herself to keep up, one hand under her belly like she's holding it together. The stairwell's narrow, the wood creaking under their weight, and that dripping sounds louder now, echoing off the walls like a taunt. They hit the second floor landing, and Mrs. Carter's door is hanging open, just a crack, the light inside spilling out in this sickly yellow glow. Omar shoves it wide with his shoulder, and they pile in after him, stopping dead when they see her. Mrs. Carter's there, half sunk into the wall by her kitchenette, her arm buried up to the elbow like the plasters swallowed it whole. Her skin's fusing with it, pale and wrinkled one second, then blending into the wall's texture the next, like it's melting into place. Her eyes are huge, bloodshot, veins popping out as she gasps, "It's drinking me." Her voice is this wet, choking sound, barely human, and her free hand claws at the air, fingers trembling. The group just stares, frozen, as her body jerks, once, twice, convulsing like something's pulling her in. Ava lets out a small, "Oh God," her hands flying to her mouth, while Jasper takes a step forward, then stops, like he wants to help but doesn't know how. Omar's crowbar clatters to the floor, his bravado gone, and Lily turns away, pressing her face into her sleeve, muffling a sob. Before they can even think to move, Mrs. Carter's sinking deeper, the wall rippling around her like it's alive. Her chest goes in, then her shoulders, her head tilting back as she lets out one last gurgling cry. Then she's gone. Well, almost. Her face stays, pressed into the plaster, eyes wide open, mouth stretched in this silent scream that doesn't stop because it can't. The room goes quiet, except for that dripping, steady as ever, and the faint hum of the lights flickering overhead. Ava's backing up now, bumping into a chair, her breath hitching like she's about to lose it. Jasper's muttering, "That's not possible, that's not possible," over and over, digging in his bag for his phone like it's got answers. Omar just stands there, staring at the wall, crowbar forgotten at his feet, while Lily grips the doorframe, whispering to her baby again, we're okay," even though nobody believes it anymore. And downstairs, back in the lobby, that red's still pooling, spreading slow and quiet, like it knows they'll be back soon. So they stumble back down to the lobby, the four of them, Omar, Ava, Jasper, and Lily, still reeling from what they just saw upstairs with Mrs. Carter. The air's thicker now, heavy with this sour, damp smell, and the lights are flickering worse than before, throwing shadows that dance across the walls like they're mocking them. Panic's setting in hard. You can feel it in the way they're breathing. Quick, shallow gasps, like they're trying not to choke on it. Ava's hands are trembling so bad she can barely hold on to anything, but she's got this crumpled napkin she snatched from a stack by the mailboxes, and she's sketching on it with a stubby pencil she dug out of her pocket. Her fingers move fast, shaky lines forming misses. Carter's face, those wide, frozen eyes, that silent scream pressed into the wall. It's eerie how spot on it is, like she's channeling something she shouldn't. She's muttering to herself, voice barely above a whisper, "I've seen this, in my dreams, weeks ago." Her eyes are glassy, staring at the sketch like it's staring back, and she wipes her nose with her sleeve, smudging graphite across her cheek. Jasper's right there, hovering over her shoulder, and he snatches the napkin out of her hands, holding it up to the dim light. "Wait, what?" he says, sharp and quick, like he's just been slapped awake. He's got his notebook out now, flipping through pages of scribbled notes, stuff he's been jotting down about Ashwood Biotech for his project. Precognition's impossible, he says, more to himself than her, but exposure might explain it, some kind of chemical trigger maybe. He looks at her, eyes narrowing. "Have you been near the lab? Like ever? Even just passing by?" Ava blinks, caught off guard, and shakes her head slow. "No, I don't leave much. Just the store, the park sometimes." Her voice trails off, and she pulls her hoodie tighter like she's trying to shrink into it. Jasper's chewing his lip, flipping pages again, muttering, "Then how?" But he doesn't finish, just keeps staring at that napkin like it's a puzzle he can't crack. Omar's not having any of it. His face goes dark, all hard lines and clenched jaw, and he cuts through their chatter like a knife. "Enough theories," he snaps, loud enough to make Lily flinch. "We need to stop this, not sit here yapping about dreams." He's pacing again, boots thudding heavy, and his eyes lock on this old fire extinguisher bolted to the wall by the stairwell. It's dented, paint chipped, probably hasn't been checked in years, but he yanks it free with a grunt, the metal screeching as it comes loose. He stomps over to where the red's still oozing down from the ceiling, pooling bigger now, and aims the nozzle. "Let's see how you like this," he mutters, and squeezes the trigger. White foam blasts out, hissing as it hits the wall, but it's no good. The stuff sizzles, bubbling like it's acid, and melts right into those red veins, disappearing like it's being sucked in. The building lets out this low, guttural groan, deep and rumbling, like something waking up pissed off, and the lights dim even more, plunging them into this murky half-dark where everything's shadows and edges. Lily's over by the mailboxes still, but now she's clutching her stomach with both hands, her face twisting up as she doubles over. "It's not kicking," she gasps, her voice high and tight. "It's clawing." She sinks down a little, knees buckling, and grabs the edge of a mailbox to steady herself, her nails scraping the metal with a faint screech. Her breathing's ragged, and she's got this wild look in her eyes, like she's feeling something nobody else can. Jasper drops his notebook, rushing over, his med student instincts kicking in. He kneels beside her, gentle but quick, and grabs her wrist, fingers pressing to find her pulse. "Hey, look at me," he says, voice steady even though his hands are shaking a little. "Breathe slow, okay? Stress could be inducing labor early. We need to keep you calm." She nods, but it's jerky, and she's biting her lip so hard it's turning white. "It's not right," she whispers. "It's moving too much." Jasper's jaw tightens, and he glances back at the wall like he's connecting dots he doesn't want to. Outside, the fog's so thick now it's pressing up against the windows, this swirling gray blanket that swallows everything. But then, movement. Shadows shifting out there, human shapes, but all wrong. Their limbs are too long, dragging like they're broken, heads tilted at angles that snap a neck. The group's barely got time to process it when someone slams against the lobby window, hard enough to rattle the frame. It's one of the tenants from across the hall, this guy named Rick, who's always griping about the heat. He's screaming, "Let me in, please," pounding the glass with fists that don't look right anymore. His face presses close, nose smushing against it, and then, Jesus, it peels away, slow and sick, like skin sloughing off a burn. Where his skull should be, there's just this hollow cavity, dark and glistening, and his screams cut off into this wet gurgle before he slumps out of sight. Ava yelps, stumbling back into Omar, who's still holding the useless extinguisher like it's a shield. Lily's got her hands over her mouth, muffling a cry, and Jasper's on his feet now, staring wide-eyed, whispering, "What the hell was that?" They barely get a breath before the wall behind them moves. Not shakes, moves. More of those red veins sprout up, creeping down from the ceiling, slow and deliberate, like they're reaching for the floor. The plaster cracks with little pops, and that dripping sounds back, louder, wetter, syncing up with the pounding in their ears. Omar spins around, extinguisher clattering to the ground, and grabs his crowbar again, gripping it so tight his knuckles go pale. "This ain't stopping," he says, voice low, almost lost under the building's groaning. Ava's backed up against the stairwell now, her sketch still clutched in one hand, eyes darting between the window and the wall. Lily's still crouched, rocking a little, whispering to her baby like it's the only thing keeping her sane, while Jasper's fumbling with his phone again, hands shaky as he tries to dial out, muttering, come on, pick up!" But the signal's dead, and all they've got left is the sound of that red creeping closer, the fog pressing in, and the feeling that whatever's happening, it's only just getting started. The lobby of the Crestwood Apartments is a damn mess at this point, and the air's gone thick, humid, like the whole place is sweating out some kind of fever. It's clinging to their skin, making their clothes stick, and there's this faint, rancid whiff, like wet earth and something rotting, mixing with that coppery blood smell from before. They're all huddled there, still reeling from Rick's hollowed-out face at the window, and Jasper's trying to keep his head on straight. He's got his pocket knife out now, this little thing with a chipped blade he's probably had since Boy Scouts, and he's crouched over one of those red puddles on the floor. His hands are steady. Guy's got nerves of steel for a med student, and he's scraping up a bit of the ooze, holding it close to his face, squinting at it in the flickering light. "It's fungal, all right," he says, calm but firm, like he's diagnosing a patient. "Engineered to bond with organic and inorganic matter, walls, skin, whatever. And here's the kicker, it's feeding on adrenaline. Fear makes it grow." He wipes the blade on his jeans, leaving a faint red streak, and looks up at them, his face pale but set. "We've got to stop freaking out, or we're just making it worse." Omar's standing there, crowbar gripped so tight his knuckles are popping out white against his skin, and he's staring at the floor, jaw working like he's chewing on something bitter. "I know why it's here," he says, voice low, rough, almost lost under the hum of the lights. He won't meet their eyes, just keeps glaring at the tile like it's going to confess for him. The others turn slow, heads tilting, and Lily's the first to snap. "What'd you say?" she asks, sharp, her hands still cradling her belly. Omar shifts his weight, boots scuffing the floor, and finally mutters, "The lab. They paid me last year. Said they'd test some air filters in the vents. Thought it was safe, just extra cash for repairs." He shrugs like it's no big deal, but his shoulders are hunched, and that tick in his jaw's back, twitching like a live wire. Lily's calm shatters. She lunges at him, faster than you'd think for someone 7 months pregnant, her hands clawing at his chest. "You let this in?" she yells, voice breaking into a scream. "My baby's in danger because of you." Omar stumbles back, crowbar clanging against the wall, and he grabs her wrists, not hard, just enough to stop her. "I didn't know," he barks, but there's guilt in his eyes now, dark and heavy. Ava's off to the side, staring at the walls, which are pulsing faster now, those red veins throbbing like they're keeping time with their shouting. "It's listening," she says, her voice hollow like she's not all there. She's got that napkin sketch crumpled in her fist, and her eyes are locked on the plaster, because right then, the veins start shifting, twisting into this crude, lumpy shape. It's a face, Omar's face, rough and jagged, with a silent, mocking laugh stretched across it. The group freezes, mouths open, and Omar's face goes slack, like he's seeing a ghost. "What the?" he starts, then roars, swinging his crowbar at it full force. The metal cracks into the wall with a loud crunch, splintering plaster, but the face doesn't break, it just laughs harder, this deep, rumbling echo that vibrates up through the floorboards and into their bones. Bits of dust rain down, sticking to the sweat on their faces, and Ava steps back, whispering, "I told you," like she's not surprised at all. Jasper's phone buzzes then, cutting through the noise, a sharp little vibration that makes them all jump. He fumbles it out of his pocket, screen lighting up his face, and reads aloud, "Lab's gone dark. Military's coming. Hold on." It's from some classmate, and for a split second, hope flickers. Lily straightens up a bit. Omar lowers the crowbar. Ava blinks like she's waking up. "Military," Jasper says, grinning shaky. "They'll get us out." But the building's got other plans. There's this deafening creak, loud enough to make your ears ring, and the stairwell, the one they just came down, starts groaning like it's in pain. The wood splinters, snapping with loud cracks, and the whole thing collapses inward, floor caving into this black pit that wasn't there before. Red tendrils shoot up from it, writhing like a nest of snakes, slick and glistening. And Jasper's too close. He stumbles, foot slipping on the edge, and yells, "Shit!" as he goes down. His screams cut short, sharp and desperate, as those tendrils wrap around him fast, yanking him under. His hands claw at the floor, nails scraping tile, but he's gone in seconds, swallowed up, and all that's left is the echo of his voice and the faint thud of his phone hitting the ground, screen still glowing. Lily screams a raw gut punch sound and drops to her knees, hands digging into her hair. "No, no, no!" She's sobbing, rocking back and forth, while Omar's just staring at the pit, crowbar dangling loose in his hand, muttering, "Kid," like he can't believe it. Ava's frozen, eyes wide, still clutching that damn napkin, and the walls pulse harder, like they're celebrating. The air's so thick now it's hard to breathe, and that dripping sound's back, steady and smug, mixing with the creaks and groans of the building settling around them. Outside, the fog's still pressing in, and those weird shadows are still moving, but inside, it's just the three of them now, Omar, Lily, Ava, standing there panting with that pit yawning open like a mouth waiting for its next bite. Lily's clutching her stomach again, gasping through tears. It's still moving, and Omar's shaking his head, muttering, "I didn't know, I swear," like it's gonna fix anything. Ava's the only one still looking at the walls, her voice barely a whisper as she says, "It's not done with us yet." And you can tell she's right, because the floor's starting to tremble again, and whatever's down there, it's hungry for more. So Ava, Lily, and Omar are out of options. The lobby's a wreck with that pit where the stairwell used to be, and the only way to go is down. They scramble for the basement door, tucked behind the mailboxes. It's this rusty metal thing, half off its hinges, and Omar kicks it open with a grunt, the clang echoing like a gunshot. The stairs are steep, narrow, concrete slick with damp, and they're stumbling over each other to get down, shoes slipping, hands grabbing at the peeling handrail. The air hits them hard as they descend, this thick, choking stench of rot, like wet leaves gone bad, mixed with something sour and meaty. The walls down here are glistening, slick with these fleshy growths that pulse faintly, and as their eyes adjust to the dim, flickering bulb swinging overhead, they see them, faces. Tenants they've known, old Mr. Jenkins from 2B, the quiet girl who always wore headphones, their mouths moving in silent pleas, lips twitching like they're trying to scream but can't. It's like the building's wearing their skin now, and the sight makes Ava gag, her hand flying to her mouth as she steadies herself against the wall, then yanks it back fast when it feels warm and sticky under her fingers. Lily's barely holding it together, her breath's coming in sharp gasps, and halfway down the stairs, she freezes, doubling over with a cry that cuts through the damp air. "It's coming," she sobs, her voice raw, and she collapses against a rusted pipe running along the wall, her hands clawing at it for support. The building groans with her, this deep, shuddering sound that rattles the stairs, and you can hear the strain in it, like it's feeling her pain too. Her face is slick with sweat, hair plastered to her forehead, and she's gripping her belly, nails digging into her own skin as contractions hit hard. I can't do this here," she chokes out, tears streaming down her cheeks, but there's no choice, and they all know it. Omar's hovering near her, useless with his crowbar dangling at his side, muttering, "Hang on, just hang on," like it's gonna help. They hit the basement floor, and that's when they see it, the source of all this nightmare fuel. In the middle of the room, surrounded by cracked concrete and tangles of old pipes, There's this pulsing, heart-like mass of fungal flesh, bigger than a man, throbbing wet and slow. It's studded with human limbs, arms, legs, fingers, sticking out at wrong angles, and eyes, dozens of them, blinking and rolling, tracking their every move. The air around it hums, this low, sick vibration you can feel in your teeth, and Ava stops dead, her boots skidding on the damp floor. "I painted this," she whispers, her voice barely there, like she's talking to herself. She's staring at it, wide-eyed, and you can see her hands twitch, like she's itching to sketch it again. "It's been in my head, weeks, months maybe." Her breath hitches, and she takes a shaky step back, bumping into a stack of moldy boxes that topple with a soft thud, spilling old newspapers across the floor. Omar doesn't waste time gawking. "Screw that," he growls, charging at the thing with his crowbar raised high. His boots pound the concrete, and he swings hard, aiming for the center of that pulsing mess. But the core's faster. Tendrils lash out, slick and red, wrapping around his legs like whips. He yells, a deep, furious sound, and swings again, but they yank him off his feet, dragging him toward it. Lily's still propped against the pipe, and she screams, "You sold us out!" as he's pulled in, her voice cracking with rage and pain. His body hits the mass with a wet smack, and it's like watching clay melt. His arms sink in, then his chest, his face sprouting up alongside the others, mouth open in a scream that doesn't stop. The crowbar clatters to the ground, spinning a little before it settles, and the core pulses harder, like it's feeding off him. Lily's sobbing now, slumped against the pipe, and then there's this gush. Her water breaks, soaking her jeans, pooling on the concrete. She lets out a guttural cry, sliding down to her knees, and what comes next is straight out of a nightmare. She births something, a writhing, fungal thing, its skin crisscrossed with red veins, eyes black and glossy like beetles. It's small, barely the size of a real baby, but it moves fast, dragging itself across the floor with these jerky, spider-like twitches, leaving a trail of slime behind. Lily's staring at it, horrified, whispering, "No, that's not mine." But it's already crawling to the core, fusing with it in this sick, seamless meld. The building shudders hard, walls tightening like a fist, concrete cracking with loud pops as the whole place seems to flex inward. Dust rains down, and that humming gets louder, vibrating up through their feet. Ava's the only one still on her game. She's shaking, sure, but she spots this dented gas can in the corner, probably left from some half-assed repair job Omar never finished. She lunges for it, her sneakers squeaking on the wet floor, and yanks the cap off with trembling hands. The sharp stink of gasoline cuts through the rot as she splashes it over the core, liquid sloshing over those limbs and eyes, making them twitch faster. "We end this," she says, her voice hard now, no trace of that hollow whisper. She digs in her pocket, pulls out a matchbook. She's a smoker, picked up the habit to steady her nerves, and strikes one. The flame flares up, small but bright, casting wild shadows across her face. She doesn't hesitate, just flicks it toward the core, and it lands with a soft whoosh, igniting the gas in a rush of heat and light. The fire roars up, orange and angry, swallowing the mass, and those tendrils thrash, sizzling as they burn. Lily's still on the floor, panting, tears cutting tracks through the grime on her face, and Ava's grabbing her arm, hauling her up. "Move!" she yells, voice cracking over the roar of the flames. The basement's filling with smoke now, thick and black, stinging their eyes, and the walls are groaning louder, like the whole place is about to come down. They stumble back toward the stairs, Ava half-dragging Lily, her grip tight as the fire spreads, licking up the fleshy growths, popping and hissing like wet wood. The heat's intense, pushing at their backs, and as they claw their way up those slick steps, the building starts to shake harder, a deep, bone-rattling tremble that says they're not out of this yet, not by a long shot. The basement's a furnace now, and the explosion hits like a thunderclap, this deafening boom that shakes the whole damn building. Flames roar up behind Ava and Lily, a wall of heat and light blasting through the concrete, swallowing that fungal core in a snarling inferno. Ava's got Lily's arm in a death grip, dragging her up the crumbling stairwell. The steps are cracking under their feet, chunks of concrete tumbling down into the fire below. The walls are collapsing in slow motion, groaning and snapping like old bones, plaster raining down in gritty clouds that clog their throats. Ava's coughing, her free hand swatting at the dust, while Lily's stumbling, legs shaky, still clutching her stomach like she's afraid to let go. "Come on, almost there," Ava yells, her voice hoarse over the roar, and they push through the smoke, lungs burning, eyes streaming as the heat licks at their heels. They burst out the basement door and onto the street, tripping over the threshold, and that's when Crestwood Apartments gives up the ghost. The whole place implodes behind them with a gut punch whoosh, a fireball blooming up through the fog, lighting it orange and red like some twisted sunrise. The ground shakes, windows shattering in a cascade of glass that glints in the haze, and Ava pulls Lily down to the pavement, shielding her as debris patters around them. Bits of brick, charred wood, a singed shred of curtain fluttering down like a dead leaf. Overhead, military helicopters are slicing through the night, their blades thumping loud and steady, cutting through the ringing in their ears. Soldiers in hazmat suits drop down on ropes, boots hitting the asphalt with muffled thuds, rifles slung across their chests. The fog's still thick, swirling around them, but you can hear shouts now, orders barked over crackling radios, and the sharp beep of equipment scanning the wreckage. Lily's clinging to Ava, her fingers digging into her arm, sobbing hard enough that her whole body's shaking. "It's over," she chokes out, voice muffled against Ava's shoulder, snot and tears smearing her face. Ava nods, her breath still ragged, and she forces this tight, shaky smile, patting Lily's back like she's comforting a kid. Yeah, it's done," she says, but there's this itch under her skin, sharp, insistent, crawling up her left arm. She glances down when Lily's not looking, pulling her sleeve back just enough, and there they are, faint red veins, thin as spiderwebs, creeping up from her wrist. They're pulsing, growing slow but sure, and her stomach twists. She yanks the sleeve down fast, hiding it, and turns that smile back on as one of the soldiers stomps over, his suit crinkling with every step. He's got this handheld scanner, a little box with a blinking green light, and he waves it over her, saying, "You're safe now," in this clipped, tired voice. But the thing starts beeping erratically, fast, then slow, then fast again, and his head tilts, like he's not sure what he's seeing. His radio crackles then, cutting through the chopper noise, and a voice spits out, "Containment failed. Host is mobile." Ava's head snaps up, sharp, like she's been slapped, and her vision blurs for a second. Everything goes swimmy, edges softening. She blinks hard, trying to shake it, and catches her reflection in the soldier's shiny helmet visor. It's not just her face staring back. Her eyes are black, deep and empty, and her mouth stretching into this wide, unnatural smile. Tendrils are curling out from her fingertips, thin and red, twitching like they've got a mind of their own. Her breath catches because it hits her hard. The building wasn't the host. She is. The soldier's still fiddling with his scanner, muttering, "Hold on, readings are off," but she's already moving. She lunges, fast as a snake, and her voice comes out wrong. A chorus, layered with the dead tenant's screams, Mrs. Carter's rasp, Omar's growl, all of them at once. "We're not done." The soldier yells, stumbling back, and the others spin around, rifles snapping up. Shots ring out, sharp cracks splitting the air, but she's gone, vanishing into the fog like smoke, her laughter echoing back, high and wild, bouncing off the ruined street. Bullets tear through the haze, hitting nothing, and the soldiers fan out, shouting, "Where'd she go? Fan out now!" Somewhere in the chaos, Jasper's phone, dropped way back when the tendrils took him, lies cracked on the pavement, its screen flickering. It's still recording, catching the tail end of Ava's laugh before it cuts to static, the battery finally giving out. Days later, you'd see it on the news. Some polished anchor in a studio, voice smooth as butter, saying, "The Ashwood outbreak has been contained, thanks to swift military action. No further threat reported." They'd show drone footage of the smoldering rubble, hazmat teams poking through it, and everyone at home would nod and change the channel. But if you pause that broadcast, right at the end, there's this one blurry frame. A crowd shot from some nearby town, people milling around, watching the smoke in the distance. And there she is, Ava, standing at the edge, half turned away. Her face is wrong now, veins red and thick, covering her like a map, eyes black as coal, that smile still there, watching, waiting. The screen flickers and she's gone again, but you'd know it. Whatever she's become, it's out there, and it's not even close to done. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more creepy stories. Stay safe, and see you in the next nightmare.